9.3. Zeros, roots, solutions of a quadratic. In other words, setting an equation ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. Here we're going to have the possibility of 2 solutions, 1 solution, and 0 solution. In other words, where it crosses the x-axis. For the first problem, notice that the parabola crosses at -2 and 2. And to check that, we get x is equal to -2. We plug in the number, and we see that that is equal to 0. Also, if we plug in +2, we will also get 0. For the second problem, notice that it only touches the x-axis, so there's only 1 times going to be equal to 0. And sure enough, at this example, it shows it at 1, so when I plug in 1, I get 0. I don't have any other points because the parabola goes off to infinity, both to the left and right. And finally, the third example, it does not cross the x-axis at all. So we will never cross the x-axis, so we'll never have 0. And that means that there's going to be a no solution. More importantly for these problems, we want to actually solve equations algebraically as opposed to just observing the graphs. So for the first one, we have 0 is equal to x squared minus 25. We have to go back to chapter 2 information. Solve the problem by solving for x squared. I add 25 to both sides. That gives 25 is equal to x squared. And what we know is we can plug in both +5 and -5 as a solution here. However, proving it algebraically, I take the square root of both sides, being sure to add and subtract the square root. Gives us plus or minus 5. For the second example, I have to first subtract 18 from both sides. That gives me -18 is equal to 2x squared. Second, divide 2 from both sides. Gives me -9 is equal to x squared. And then finally, take the square root of both sides, not to forget the plus or minus, because when you square a number, it can be either positive or negative. However, I run into an issue here because I cannot take a square root of a negative number, and therefore this problem is going to have no solution. In other words, we're always going to have a positive number, because when we square a number, it's positive, plus 18 means it's going to be even more positive. Finally, the last problem is going to be 1 solution. So first step is simplify the left-hand side by combining the 5 and the 10. Next, subtracting 15 from both sides, giving me 3x squared is equal to 0. Next, divide both sides by 3, giving me x squared is equal to 0. And then square rooting both sides, being sure to use addition and subtraction, so positive and negative. And now what we have is x is equal to positive or negative 0, which 0 is neither positive or negative. That is 9.3.